The house I shouldn't have entered. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe boredom, or maybe the stupid need to prove something to myself. Whatever the reason, that night I stepped into the house at the end of Willow Street, the house everyone warned me about. From the outside, it looked abandoned for decades. Its windows were broken, shutters dangling loose, and the roof sagged in the middle like it might collapse at any moment. The neighbors whispered about it endlessly, saying strange lights flickered inside at night, that you could hear footsteps echoing even when the place was empty, but no one dared to go near. I told myself those were just stories, the kind that small towns invent to make life interesting. I didn't believe in ghosts, at least I didn't then. The air around the house felt heavier than it should have, like it carried something rotten. I pushed open the gate and it screeched loudly, the sound slicing through the silence of the night. My flashlight beam shook slightly as I walked up the cracked stone path, weeds curling around my ankles. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first warning sign. A place like this, abandoned for so long, should have been bolted shut or at least boarded up. Instead, the handle turned with barely any effort. The moment I stepped inside, the air grew colder, and I swear I felt something brush against my arm, though nothing was there. Inside, the smell was unbearable: mold, dust, and something metallic, almost like blood.
Ow.
My flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating torn wallpaper peeling from the walls and a staircase that twisted upward into shadows. The floor creaked with every step I took, as if the house was aware of me, complaining about my intrusion. I walked into what looked like a living room. Furniture was covered with white sheets, thick with dust. On the mantel above a fireplace sat a cracked mirror. I caught my reflection for a moment, but it didn't look right. My face seemed distorted, my eyes darker than they should be. I blinked, and it was gone. Just me again, pale and sweating. The stories I had laughed at started to creep back into my mind. Kids had said that, once you entered the house, you never left the same. Some swore they heard voices calling their names. Others said they saw people standing in the windows, even though the place was deserted. I told myself it was all nonsense. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. From somewhere upstairs, a door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the empty rooms, so sharp and sudden that I froze. My first instinct was to run, to leave before something worse happened. But something stronger pulled me deeper inside, a sick mix of fear and fascination. I found myself climbing the staircase, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Each step groaned under my weight, dust rising around me like smoke. When I reached the top, the hallway stretched into darkness, lined with doors on both sides. That was when I heard it. A whisper. It wasn't just any whisper, it was my name, soft, stretched out, as if spoken by someone standing right next to me. My blood ran cold, my throat dried instantly, but I forced myself to call out, "Who's there?" No reply, just silence. I moved toward the first door and pushed it open. Inside was a bedroom, untouched for years. The bed was neatly made, though the sheets were yellowed with age. A small rocking chair sat in the corner, and to my horror, it began to move slowly back and forth, as if someone had just left it. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my flashlight. The beam landed on a dresser, with a row of photographs. Dust covered most of them, but I could still make out faces. A family: mother, father, 2 children. Their smiles were wide, but their eyes looked strange, hollow. I leaned closer and felt my heart stop. One of the photographs showed the family standing outside the very house I was in, and behind them, in the upstairs window, was a shadowy figure. A figure with glowing white eyes. I backed away, but before I could leave the room, I heard the whisper again, closer this time, right behind my ear. "Don't go." The flashlight flickered violently and then went out, and in that perfect, suffocating darkness, I heard footsteps circling me, slow, heavy, getting closer. Whispers behind the walls. When the flashlight died, I thought my heart would stop along with it. Darkness in that house wasn't like normal darkness. It felt alive, pressing against my skin, seeping into me. I fumbled with the flashlight, smacking it against my palm, until the weak beam finally flickered back to life. The room looked the same, but the rocking chair had stopped moving. I wanted to convince myself it was just my imagination, just nerves. But then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The photographs on the dresser were different. They weren't the smiling family anymore. Now each picture showed their faces blurred, melted almost, except for their eyes. Their eyes were glowing white. That was when I heard the whisper again. Not from behind me this time, no. It was coming from inside the walls. First it was faint, like wind through cracks in the wood. Then it grew clearer, overlapping voices, all whispering at once, like a crowd trapped inside. My name threaded through the noise again and again, each voice different men, women, children, all calling Arham. Aham. I couldn't breathe. The walls seemed to pulse with the whispers, as though the house itself was alive and speaking. "Stop it!" I shouted, my voice cracking. My words sounded small, swallowed by the endless murmurs. I stumbled back into the hallway, nearly tripping over the uneven floorboards. The whispers didn't follow me out of the room, but the silence that replaced them was somehow worse. I turned left, shining the beam down the hallway. At the far end, one of the doors creaked open slowly on its own. My throat tightened. I should have left. I knew I should have left. But something about that door, the way it opened, as if waiting for me, drew me forward. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, each one like a warning drumbeat. The door led into what looked like a child's bedroom. The walls were painted with faded stars and moons, the kind that might have glowed once long ago. A toy chest sat in the corner, its lid half open, and a small wooden bed was tucked against the wall. The air in the room was colder, and I could see my breath fogging up in front of me. That was when I heard it, the soft giggle of a child. Froze. The giggle came from the toy chest. The lid shifted slightly, and then, as if pushed from inside, it slammed shut with a violent bang. I jumped so hard I almost dropped the flashlight again. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but before I could, the rocking horse in the corner began to move. Back and forth, and then I saw it. In the reflection of the window glass, just faintly, a child was sitting on the bed. But when I turned around, the bed was empty. My skin prickled, every hair on my body standing upright. "Who's there?" I whispered. The child's voice answered, soft and broken, "Lay with me." My chest tightened so much I could barely inhale. I stepped backward toward the hallway, but as I did, the closet door burst open. Inside, I caught a glimpse of small handprints smeared across the wood in something dark, something red. That was enough. I turned and ran. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, like it was twisting and bending away from me. My legs pumped, but the more I ran, the further the staircase seemed. The whispers returned louder now, not just in the walls, but in my head. They filled my ears, overlapping, screaming my name, laughing, crying, whispering all at once. I clutched my head, desperate to block them out, but nothing worked. When I finally reached the staircase, I nearly fell headfirst down it. My flashlight beams swung wildly across the first floor, and that's when I realized something terrifying. The sheets covering the furniture were gone. The couches, the chairs, the table, everything was uncovered, and sitting in them were people, not living people. Figures pale and gray, their eyes glowing white like the photos upstairs. They were frozen in positions as if they had just been caught mid-dinner, mid-conversation. One woman's head slowly turned toward me, her mouth opening unnaturally wide. I staggered back, almost falling again. My instincts told me to bolt out the front door, but when I looked for it, it wasn't there. The hallway had shifted, the door was gone, replaced by another wall. The whispers grew deafening. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the sound came from inside me now, rattling my skull. Stay with us. Forever. I screamed and threw the flashlight across the room, shattered against the floor, the beam snapping out instantly. The room plunged into absolute blackness, and in that blackness, I felt cold hands grab my arms. The thing that watches me, those hands were ice cold. The grip was firm, unshakable, and yet when I swung around in panic, there was nothing, no one behind me. My skin burned where the fingers had touched, as though frostbite had sunk into my flesh.
And the whispers were gone.
The silence that followed felt even more suffocating. My heartbeat was so loud it echoed in my ears, drowning everything else out. I stood frozen in the dark, too afraid to move. My only light source was gone. The house had swallowed me whole, and I knew I wasn't leaving the way I came. Then, from the corner of the room, something moved. I couldn't see it, but I felt it. A presence so heavy, it made the air vibrate, pressing on my chest like a weight. My eyes strained in the dark, adjusting slowly, and that's when I saw it. 2 white glowing eyes. They floated in the darkness, level with my own, but far too wide apart to belong to anything human. They didn't blink, they just stared. I couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body was rooted to the spot. The thing stepped closer, and the sound of its movement wasn't footsteps. It was like bones dragging across wood. The whispers started again, but softer now, like the sound of someone breathing right against my ear. It's watching you. It's always been watching you. The eyes inched closer, and as they did, a shape began to emerge from the darkness. Its body was tall, far taller than any person. Its limbs too long, its back hunched unnaturally. Its skin, or what looked like skin, was stretched thin over its frame, gray and tight as if it had been starved for centuries. I stumbled backward until my spine hit the wall. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The thing tilted its head, studying me like a predator deciding whether its prey was worth the effort. And then it smiled. I don't mean it moved its mouth. I mean I felt it smile, deep in my bones. A wave of cold dread rushed through me so strong I thought I might collapse. "Why me?" I finally whispered, though my voice barely worked. The reply wasn't words, but I understood it, a thought planted directly into my head. "Because you came." The thing reached one of its arms toward me, its fingers unnaturally long, ending in sharp, jagged nails. The wall behind me felt like it was closing in, leaving me no escape. I dropped to the floor, rolling away, just as its claws scraped across the wall where my head had been, but splintered, leaving deep gouges. I scrambled to my feet and ran, blind in the dark, hands outstretched, praying I'd find a door, a window, anything. The whispers chased me, rising again, now angry, now laughing. "Run, run. You can't run from it." I tripped over something, a chair, a body. I didn't stop to find out. Crawling, I slammed into another door and shoved it open. The smell that hit me nearly made me gag. It was a kitchen. The counters were coated with grime, pots left on the stove as if abandoned mid-cooking. But it wasn't the filth that made me freeze. It was the table in the center. Laid out neatly on the table were bones, human bones. Some were small, fragile children's bones. Others were larger, broken, gnawed. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. That's when I realized I wasn't alone in the kitchen. In the far corner, hunched low, was the thing. Its glowing eyes locked on me as it crouched, its body folding in ways that weren't possible. It hadn't chased my Ed, had led me here. It wanted me to see. The whispers pounded in my head again. "You're next. Sit down. Become part of the house." I staggered backward, my hand fumbling against the counter, until it closed around something cold and metal, a knife. It was dull and rusted, but it was something. The thing uncurled itself from the corner, standing taller than the ceiling should have allowed. Its head scraped the plaster, its neck twisting at an impossible angle as it bent toward me. My entire body shook, but I raised the knife anyway, the only barrier between me and whatever this nightmare was. The creature leaned close enough that I could smell its breath, rotten and wet. And then, in a voice that wasn't a whisper, but a guttural growl, it finally spoke aloud. "Stay." The word rattled the walls, the floor, the air itself. And before I could react, the lights in the kitchen flickered on for just a split second, long enough for me to see what I hadn't wanted to. The walls weren't covered in wallpaper, they were covered in skin. Trapped between reality and nightmare, the kitchen lights flickered once, twice, and then went out again. But that one glimpse was enough to burn the image into my brain forever, though. Walls stretched tight with pale, wrinkled skin, stitched together like some grotesque tapestry. My stomach heaved, but I couldn't move, couldn't even look away. The knife in my hand trembled, felt useless, like a toy against the towering shadow that stood before me. The creature's glowing eyes never blinked, never wavered, only bore into me with suffocating intensity. "Stay," it growled again, the word reverberating through the house like an earthquake. I stumbled back, gripping the knife so tightly my knuckles turned white. "No," I whispered, though my voice sounded like a child's, weak, shaking, pitiful. "I'm leaving." The thing tilted its head, and and for a split second I thought I saw amusement flash in those blinding eyes. Then the floor beneath me shifted. It didn't creak or break, it moved, like I was standing on the chest of something alive. The tiles rippled under my shoes, and I lost my balance, falling hard. My flashlight shards crunched beneath me, cutting into my palms. The whispers returned, but this time they weren't in the walls. They were in my head, overlapping, chanting, dragging me under. You belong here. You saw too much. You are part of us now. I clutched my ears, but it didn't help. Voices weren't around me, they were inside me. The room spun violently, the air thick and unbreathable. My vision blurred, and when it cleared, I wasn't in the kitchen anymore. I was back in the hallway. Only it wasn't the same hallway. The wallpaper had peeled away entirely, replaced with that same stitched skin. The doors weren't doors anymore, they were mouths. Wide, gaping, with jagged teeth, silently screaming. I staggered forward, my knife still clutched in my hand, but my legs felt heavy like I was dragging chains. I didn't know if I was awake or trapped in some nightmare, and maybe there wasn't even a difference anymore. The whispers guided me, pulling me toward the farthest door. Or mouth. Whatever it was now, come closer. We're waiting. I wanted to fight it, wanted to turn and run. But my body disobeyed me, moving on its own, step by step down the hallway that seemed to stretch longer with every step I took. At last, I reached the final door. My hand lifted, trembling, and turned the knob. The room inside was nothing like the others. It was bright. Sunlight streamed in through large windows, golden and warm. The air smelled fresh, like flowers. For a moment, I thought I had broken free, that I had escaped the nightmare. A dining table sat in the middle of the room. Round it was the family I had seen in the photographs. The mother, the father, the two children. They were alive, smiling, laughing, as though nothing had ever gone wrong. My chest ached. Maybe this was the truth. Maybe the whispers were lies, and this was the reality I had forgotten. The mother looked up at me and smiled kindly. "You're just in time for dinner." I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. I stepped forward, my knife slipping from my hand and clattering onto the floor. The family's laughter grew louder, warmer, filling the room. But then I noticed their eyes. White, glowing. The laughter warped, twisting into shrieks. Their mouths opened impossibly wide, stretching until their faces tore apart. The children's giggles turned into guttural growls. The father's smile split down his neck, and the mother's head tilted all the way backward with a crack. The sunlight vanished instantly. The walls peeled back, revealing nothing but endless blackness. The family was gone, the table was gone, and I was standing in the void. I turned in every direction, but there was no way out. Just darkness stretching forever. And in the distance, I saw them. Dozens, no, hundreds of glowing white eyes staring at me. Watching, waiting. The whispers rose to a deafening roar. My knees buckled, my hands shaking uncontrollably. "You cannot leave. You are ours. You always were," I screamed, dropping to the ground, clawing at the darkness, begging for escape. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. I was outside. The house loomed behind me, silent and still, its broken windows reflecting the moonlight. My hands were cut, bleeding from glass shards. The knife was still in my grip. I was free, or so I thought, because when I looked down at my arms, I saw it. Small, pale handprints, pressed into my skin, like something had held onto me, hadn't let go. The final truth? I wish I never knew I should have run that night. I should have left the street, the town, maybe even the country. But instead, I stood frozen on the cracked path outside the house, staring at it like it was staring back. The pale handprints on my arms throbbed, hot and burning, as if they were alive. I scrubbed at them desperately, but the harder I rubbed, the darker they became, spreading like bruises. Behind me, Willow Street was silent, no dogs barking, no cars passing, no neighbors peeking from windows. It was as if the entire world had vanished, leaving only me and the house. Something in me whispered that I wasn't really free. I staggered back, clutching my knife, and tried to convince myself I had imagined it. All the whispers, the creature, the skin walls. Maybe I had fallen, hit my head. Maybe my mind had played tricks. But then the front door of the house creaked open, slowly, as if inviting me back. "No," I muttered, shaking my head violently. "No, no, no. I'm done. I'm leaving." I turned and ran. I sprinted down Willow Street, lungs burning, knife clutched in one bleeding hand. But the longer I ran, the more wrong everything felt. The street stretched endlessly. Every house I passed looked the same: shuttered windows, peeling paint, sagging roofs. No matter how far I went, I never reached the end. I stopped, gasping for breath, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might split my chest. That's when I saw it. Every house on the street now looked identical, and in every window I saw the same thing: glowing white eyes staring out at me. Hundreds of them. I staggered backward, shaking my head, screaming at the empty air. "This isn't real. This isn't real." But the whispers answered, low and steady. "It's always been real. You were never outside. You never left the house." The knife slipped from my hand, clattering to the pavement. My vision blurred with tears. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, trying to block out the voices, but they grew louder, overlapping, endless, then silence. I opened my eyes again. I was standing in the hallway of the house. The stitched skin walls, the gaping mouths where doors should have been, the darkness breathing around me. I hadn't escaped. I never had. I staggered forward, each step heavier than the last. I tried every door, every corner, but the house twisted and shifted, leading me in circles. Sometimes the hallways stretched miles long. Other times they closed in tight, forcing me to crawl. Time lost meaning. Minutes, hours, days, maybe weeks. I couldn't tell anymore. My wounds festered, my body weakened, but still the house held me, feeding on me. And then one day or night, I don't know which, I found a mirror. It was tall, cracked, leaning against a wall of stitched flesh. At first, I didn't want to look. I was afraid of what I might see, but something compelled me, dragging my eyes upward. What I saw wasn't me. The figure in the mirror had my shape, my clothes, my face, but its eyes glowed white. Its mouth curled into a smile I didn't make. Behind it, countless figures gathered, pale and twisted, their eyes glowing the same. The reflection lifted its hand, and so did I, but I realized too, Leitai wasn't controlling it. It was controlling me. I screamed and smashed the mirror with my fist. Glass cut deep into my skin, blood pouring freely. But when I looked at my reflection in the shards, the glowing eyes remained. That's when I finally understood. The house hadn't chosen me randomly. It didn't need to chase me or trap me. It needed me to walk in on my own. And now, I was part of it. I don't know how much time has passed since then. The house is quiet now, most days. But sometimes I hear the gate creak open. I hear footsteps on the path. I hear voices, curious, nervous, daring each other to enter. And when they do, I watch. Through the windows, through the walls, through the eyes that aren't mine anymore. I whisper their names, the way the house once whispered mine. And when they finally step inside, I smile, because no one ever leaves.